Alright, Warpugs, so Forgotten Honor has asked me to take a look at a video from PancreasNoWork. And this is PancreasNoWork's video on Do or Don't for BattleTech. Now, I just got something in the mail that I have been waiting on forever. Like, legitimately. So, a little while ago, I checked out Russian Badger's video, one of Russian Badger's videos, and he talked about gamer subs, and he said that he had free samples, and I made an order, and so what I've got here are 3 samples of different gamer subs. 3 samples. I have what is this? What is this? Mango Meta. I have Titty Milk, and I have his very own Guacamole Gamer Fart 9000. If I ever got something with gamer subs, it'd be Boomer Express or something like that. I also got this wonderful sticker, which I don't know where I'm going to put that, but I'll put that somewhere. And all the other kind of good stuff. So I'm going to be trying those. I'm actually going to try them out one at a time. Probably on gaming streams. I don't know yet what I'm going to do, but we'll see how it goes. I do know that I'm going to start playing Mechanicus at some point. Hopefully I'll be playing it tomorrow. I don't know. We'll find out. Well, tonight. I don't know, guys. I'm an idiot. In any case, PancreasNoWorks. I've seen his Lyran video. I've seen a few other videos. I really want to hear him talk about Karita. I've heard him talk about House Steiner, a couple of other things, but now this is his Do or Don't for BattleTech. And I'm a big fan of the Do or Don't series. So we are going to get into this. If this is your first time ever watching this channel, as far as seeing PancreasNoWorks, I highly recommend his channel. He presents lore the way I present lore in a lot of cases, where he does have a bias. He has no problem expressing that he has a bias, but he presents his information so well, and he presents his arguments so well, that sometimes he can change even my mind on certain things. So, with all that being said, guys, let's get into this. I hope you enjoy. Here we go.
Originally, I had planned to start out my BattleTech video adventures talking about Comstar. I mean, Comstar is one of the best parts of the setting, at least in my humble opinion, but there's a problem that I soon discovered about BattleTech lore. See, Warhammer lore is often joked about as this insurmountable wall that's almost incomprehensible for a new person. And to be fair, it's certainly daunting to get info on the subject if you have no idea what the hell a Primarch is, or why this one German guy keeps going on about being a prince and an emperor. But that being said, there's usually a few roots everything traces back to fairly simply. You can describe the Imperium as evil Catholic space crusaders that worship a god emperor, and everything can kind of go down from there. And if nothing else, Chaos did it as a reliable explanation about 80% of the time, because
Hashtag blame Lorgar is always a credible defense.
Who needs interesting motives when there are canonically at least 4 different Satans in your universe? But with BattleTech, I just keep finding more roots that everything springs from. Everything keeps spiraling downward, and there's more and more lore, and everything keeps building in on itself. I suppose I can say blame that dickhead Amaris for the setting as a whole of BattleTech, but who the hell is Amaris? What do you mean the Amaris Civil War is also the Star League Civil War? What the hell is the Periphery, and why is it simultaneously incredibly important and not at all worth worrying about? Why are people watching The Color Black? See what I mean? Now, I'm sure that most of this is just I'm new to this little universe, but for that same reason, I'm gonna hold back on diving into specific factions and all that stuff for now. I'd like to at some point give them the justice they deserve, not get half of what I'm gonna say wrong, you know? Instead, let's pull back and stick to what I know. Do or don't. I think it'll be fun to give a general overview of what BattleTech is all about, what you can expect, what's good and bad, and all that other stuff like what I usually do for a Warhammer army. So with that in mind, I'd like to ask 2 things of you. If you're a Warhammer fan, I ask that you give this new universe a chance, because it really is something interesting and unique to say the very least.
I can tell you this, I got introduced to BattleTech way before I got introduced to Warhammer 40k. But I never, to me, BattleTech was just a series of games. There was Mech Commander, there was a whole bunch of other stuff, but it never went past that for me. It's like the people that play Dawn of War, but don't understand there's this whole plethora of stuff past that. So, for me, it was always just that I'm getting into this. I just bought a game. It's a franchise of games, and I'm just going to play them because they're really cool, and I never really got into much more than that. And the bad part about it was every single time I turned around, I would have, if I had like time to spare when I was younger, I couldn't really focus. Like, I would focus on the lore of the story, but, you know, I never really played. You know, I would play Mech Warrior 3, but never 2 or 1. You know, it was just that way.
If you're a BattleTech fan already, well, I ask that you lower your standards for the mountainous heights of the Black Pants Legion for this video. And please correct me on any lore inaccuracies I deliver. Even given the fact I'm going more for a feel of the setting rather than a lore dive, I'm sure there will be many. But enough about my own inadequacies. Let's see if you should give BattleTech a chance or not.
I absolutely love the Mad Cat. Anyhow,
BattleTech is a tabletop wargame started in literally 1984 by FASA Corporation, and has since traded hands in some way, shape, or form between about half a dozen companies. It was at first known as Battle Droids before LucasArts took them to Pound Town over the word droid in the name. It takes place in several different time periods, but as a rough setting point, let's go with the years 3000 to 3100 for when you'll see most games take place. The timeline does go before and beyond that, but from what I've gathered, most people play games in that time period because it's the most interesting one. Lately, BattleTech has been enjoying a bit of a growth in popularity, for a variety of reasons, from Games Workshop shooting itself in the foot a few years back, as it does every now and then, causing fans and content creators to migrate over, to new plastic kits coming out in force. The titular battle mechs were invented in the 2300s when the Terran hegemony, the people who controlled Earth, which is now called Terra because Latin sounds cool to sci-fi writers, tested them out to great effect on everyone who wasn't the Terran hegemony. Blueprints were stolen, designs copied, and soon enough everyone had their hands on a battle mech. From this point on, warfare is now decided with the big stompy robots shooting the ever-loving crap out of each other, as God no doubt intended. Humanity in BattleTech has gone through several technological and cultural renaissances, only for it to break down and implode on itself shortly after each. The most prominent example was when the Star League, the classic federation of almost all of humanity that sci-fi franchises love, collapsed into a massive civil war because of that aforementioned dickhead Amaris. He decided to off the current leader and take control himself in a massive coup that almost failed immediately. That's what happens when you don't deal with the bodyguards before you kill the leader rather than after. In the end, he did.
Typically, that's always a better idea, just saying.
It ultimately failed, but Star League was swiftly only ever referred to in the past tense, and the 5 interstellar nations that owned the territory making up the Star League swiftly began to beat the shit out of each other. Each of them were desperately trying to remake it in their own image, much like Europe historically has tried to do every 5 minutes with the Roman Empire. These successor states, as they are now known, vie for dominance to see which of them would become the next Star League. Of course, none of them ever could for a variety of reasons. The biggest one, of course, being we need a war game to happen, but there are actual in-universe reasons as well. The first is that there were 5 of these successor states. While they all have varying levels of power and influence, if any one of them focused all their power on one other successor state in particular, the other 3 would swiftly dogpile them and send them to the grave alongside the Star League. The other reason is that technology in BattleTech, much like 40k, is rather regressed from what it was. While it's not quite as bad as Warhammer, the Star League's collapse and the following succession wars between the states caused everything to go straight to hell. Several hundred years of essentially non-stop war will do that to a civilization, it turns out. And while blowing up a couple of factories and killing a couple scientists is par for the course, when you blow up 90% of them and kill almost everyone, that's a different story. Lost Tech, as it's called in the setting, is everything from farming equipment to the mechs people fight in. New breakthroughs in tech and production of higher-end equipment is so rare that a common sentiment among the armed forces is to shoot the cockpit of a mech in order to kill the meat, save the metal. Which, aside from being...
You know, that's the biggest thing. That is the biggest thing. That's what you always wanted to do. If you could manage it when you were pilot, like in any of the games that I played of this, in any of the games that I played, your whole thing was to do as little damage to the mech as absolutely possible. You didn't want to core it. That's the last thing you wanted to do. If you cored it out, it was useless. But if you managed to just maybe take out a leg or headshot the pilot, bruh.
Economical is also rad as hell. And yet another reason everything sucks is that it turns out we should always watch companies like AT&T or Verizon, because the moment we fail to pay our phone bills on time, they're gonna come knocking with enough military force to embarrass the US. Comstar, the friendly neighborhood telecommunications company that keeps the FTL communications running through their HPG network, have a side gig of executing people who try to research new things and ensuring that the successor states always fail in reunifying the Star League. Whether or not they're morally right to be doing this is a complicated question, but between Comstar, the balance of power, and never-ending war means that technology is a bit scuffed to say the least. And everything else is pretty scuffed, to be honest with you. The setting for these reasons has had a mix of feudal authorities and mech combat as its main aesthetic. Sure, you might be in a hyper-advanced combat robot for your day job, but your boss is living in something that looks straight out of 17th century Japan. And also your robot looks like a giant samurai. Gotta give House Kuruta credit, they certainly have drip. Don't forget that the samurai mech is also 200 years old, and everything on it besides the paint job is worth more than you'll ever be because no one can make it anymore. Come to the year 3050 and there's a whole load of problems to deal with. Technology is at best only starting to come back, the successor states of the inner sphere continue to go at each other with random planets being their battlegrounds. Meanwhile, all sorts of social issues abound, differing of course between planet to planet and faction to faction. Pick something wrong with the world today and there will be a BattleTech faction that exemplifies it. For example, utterly incompetent morons running the show because they're wealthier than God? Look no further than House Steiner. You can't look any further because you'll be too busy weeping when they send a formation of 4 of the largest, most destructive battle mechs somewhere and call it a stealth operation. And let's not forget the clan invasion. Turns out a couple people dipped out of the Star League as it was eating shit and a few hundred years later came back with a vengeance. Because 5 major factions constantly at war wasn't enough. Let's throw another handful of jagoffs into the mix. Why not? Oh, and of course there's mercenaries who just sell themselves out to the highest bidder. A lot of them, in fact. Because no matter the universe, no matter the circumstances, no matter what is at stake and what humanity has to gain or lose, there'll always be someone who's happy to fight for whatever your cause is as long as they can make a quick buck. And eugenics supporting clans that want to tear down the inner sphere to remake it into a new Star League in their own version of what should be. And
the sheer fact that I was about to say something, I just saw that. I gotta see this.
Catholic Church and religious cults and a guerrilla unit composed of survivors from a long-dead military regiment and...
Okay. We still have mercenaries today. We just, like, people don't know. Like, we actually have a mercenary, United States mercenary group. Like, I don't know if you guys knew that, but it exists. The Wagner Group in Russia is, they're mercenaries. There's mercenaries everywhere. There are literally mercenaries everywhere. And yes, they will fight if you have enough cash. The Catholic Church, on the other hand, that brings the Pope Mobile to a whole nother level, guys.
Nope, let's take a breather. Hang on. And also the German states run like megacorporations in the Battle of Tukad and Jerome Blake, and holy shit, there's so much lore! There's more. Of course there's more. This series has as much of a downward spiral of lore to get into as Warhammer does. But we're reaching the point where if I start saying anything more specific than this, someone is going to tell on me and I'm going to look like an idiot. More of an idiot at any rate. So why go for this setting? Well, if you're the kind of guy who sees a setting filled with a variety of alien races and goes, no, I pick generic human guy, then you're in luck. Because BattleTech has no alien factions.
Okay.
At all. The closest they have is either native alien, plant, and animal life, or one species of Stone Age bird people that made the fandom so angry the writer said that it takes place in a section of the universe so far removed they'll never interact with the main part of it. Everything.
So you're telling me if I go there I don't have to deal with the Tau? Legit.
In the galaxy is humanity, which in turn gives it a variety of other strengths. I'm going to keep comparing it to Warhammer because people say to write what you know, and I almost know that. In 40k, something that can get kind of irritating is how rarely the writers ever have a problem just be a problem that arises from clashing ideologies or anything like that. It's almost always Chaos did it, and failing that, the secondary option is usually Xenos did it. Very rarely are internal schisms, ideological differences, and the like given focus. It does happen, like with the Age of Apostasy, but not very often. In BattleTech, those kind of interesting motivations are all that there is. There's no demons to corrupt someone just by existing, no foul Xenos to pin all the blame on, it's just people. This also lends it something that's occasionally absent from sci-fi, a sense of familiarity. No one in the setting are aliens with mindsets that just don't make sense to us because they're aliens and therefore of course it won't make sense to us. Everyone in the setting is a human being with motives and principles that even if we disagree with, we can see the reason behind them. The writers can't just go...
Right. Like, at no point during this, during the short amount of lore exploration I have done into BattleTech, did I hear somebody say something that you wouldn't expect to hear 16 times over on the news.
Chaos did it, and that means BattleTech has to come up with interesting factions and scenarios that are interesting at a level beyond just their basic premise. Don't get me wrong, demons are awesome villains, but seeing two armies fight because they're so diametrically opposed rather than because one of them is nothing but orcs is something special. Of course, there are still people that feel alien, so if you want that bit of sci-fi weirdness, then look no further than the Clanners. Their development and isolation means their ideologies are in many ways alien to the rest of the setting, and given that they come from a region of space initially completely unknown to the successor states of the Inner Sphere, they feel almost like an alien invasion. But again, they're still human. It's always another human gunning for you, even if the reasons he is are a little bit moronic.
I can't appreciate the fact they're not kicking over those mailboxes. I can't appreciate that. That is very nice of them.
Speaking of motivations, if you can
I
think
love
of
Matt.
one, you can probably find
That's not a mad, that's not a catapult. That's a mad cat. I love mad cats.
one. Want to fight for money? Pick a mercenary army.
True.
Or House Steiner. Want to fight for something heroic? Depends on what you're thinking of as heroic, but the Grey Death Legion mercenary units fits the bill in my book. Want to play as a mysterious Illuminati-like faction that controls all of the others through a variety of subtle means but can get their hands dirty when needed? Comstar has your back, and also your name, date of birth, and social security information. Or maybe you want to fight in the name of God because you accidentally assumed you were the new Pope. House Davion and the New Avalon Catholic Church has got you covered. All that being said, the setting is also a very morally gray place. There's no 100% objectively right or wrong faction to be found. No one's completely good or evil, except for the Blakist Jihad, which is a story for another time. Those Grey Death Legion folk are still mercenaries after all, so despite them allowing the galaxy to once more reach technological heights long lost, they still kill people for money. Choosing a good guy in this universe is choosing which opinions and beliefs you align yourself with the most, not who has literal demons as their fighting force and who doesn't, or picking from which faction commits.
And still, even still, people sit there and say, well, chaos isn't bad. Bruh.
The most reasonable amount of genocide. I suppose this could be a negative for some people.
The most reasonable amount of genocide is always... It's amazing that's a statement that's actually accurate. It's amazing that that's a statement that's actually accurate. You ever just not know what to say when you sit there and you read something, you're like, I understand why they did it, but, God, that's a lot of bodies.
People, but I'm not one of them, so it goes as a positive. Sometimes I like to actually have to think about who's morally right in a situation.
True.
Sue me. It's Comstar, by the way.
No, it's not.
I probably should have started with this one, but if you like giant robots, you can't get better than BattleTech. I mean, they're called battle mechs. What did you expect? The standard form of warfare in this universe is to get on a robot the size of a townhouse and go wreck shop. There are still other options, however. It's not all mechs. Tanks, aircraft, infantry, we've got them all here. It's just that the mech is kind of the main selling point. And there's a lot of mechs. Dozens of those bastards, even. You are absolutely spoiled for choice in this setting.
Yeah.
And for tabletop itself, buying those mechs is very cheap for the most part. $35 for a pack of 6, which when combined with the $30 for 5 means you have a game of BattleTech on your hands, my friend. Or maybe you're feeling wealthy today and want to spring for the $50 Clanner Invasion box. You get all this stuff. Let's just go check some real quick and oh wow, look at that, $55 rulebook. No, not the rules for the game, silly. The rules for a single faction. No, it doesn't come with any models or extra bits. No, a single corporation historically dominating a market isn't bad for consumers. And that's just the official Catalyst Games website. Ironwind Metals is a bit pricier pound for pound, but you don't need nearly as many battle mechs to play a game as you need minis for other war games. In fact, 2 versus 2 mechs is an entirely realistic choice if you want to play a game. I like this guy. Look at his face. Look at his dumb, stupid face. Imagine getting killed by a mercenary piloting this. That's a morale sinker right there. You also aren't limited by faction in the game. Picking a successor state or clan or anything else doesn't lock you into certain units and provide buffs or debuffs. It's fun to mostly use mechs they would in universe, sure, but not at all required.
Locusts are the most annoying mech on the planet, with the exception of one other. And that would be the Firestarter. If you pilot a Firestarter because you like it, believe me, you're not a good person. You're just not a good person.
And if you're determined to be loreful but still want to get a new mech, just remember that very few things are being produced depending on the in-game year you're playing in, and Battlefield Salvage is a great way to up your arsenal. For a game about giant robots beating each other into the dirt, it's also some decently hard sci-fi. Yeah, FTL travel and communication is a bit out there, as it always is, but beyond that, even the mechs are probably some of those realistic depictions of that sort of thing in fiction. They've all got massive, stompy legs that don't focus too much weight on any one point, and because
the Valk has come in while I'm recording. Alright. Sorry about that, guys. I wound up going into a voice channel and sitting there, and they both, like Valk joined and said, hey, and I was in the middle of, recording. Sorry, guys. I'm a boomer.
compacted dirt doesn't collapse under buildings all of the time, and it makes sense that a robot of BattleTech's design wouldn't either. All the mechanics of the series are pretty close to what the future might look like. From combined arms warfare still being worthwhile to corporations dominating all aspects of society in some way or another. I say it's pretty close to what the future would look like because I'm not a prophet. I can't actually see into the future, and I'm sorry to disappoint you on that one. I predict Games Workshop will make more Ultramarine products. That's all you're getting out of me. Also, you might think that the time span being only a few hundred years long isn't that conducive to stories. If you think that, please go read read a real-life history book. Despite not being a 65 million year-long history, there's room for well over 100 novels to have fit in, with a million more well on the way. Also, something I really appreciate is that you can get an actual sense of meaning out of that time span. A 10,000 year long imperium is kind of hard to grasp for most people. We just aren't built to think on that big of a scale. For reference, actual history itself has been going on for about 12,000 years. Before that, it was just cavemen. So all of real-life history can almost fit into the imperium's time span. But 400 years for when most events take place in? Yeah, I can get a grasp on that. That's roughly how long America's been a thing, very first colonies included. I can get a handle on how long it took for the setting to grow and develop, for factions to form and alliances to shatter. Does this sometimes cause issues? Yeah, I mean, you might think it's weird technology regressed so quickly, but the benefits far outweigh the drawbacks of such a timescale. And lastly, and this is a massive credit to this game, BattleTech is perhaps the single most accessible war game on the planet, short of Risk if for some reason you want to count that. The basic rules are free online, and you can use literally anything as a model as long as it fits in a hex grid and has a distinguishable front, side, and back. Official models, paper cutouts, hell, use a D6 and just say which sides of it are forward, backwards, and sideways. It's all good. So if you look at certain war games and see that in order to play them you need to fork out a more than acceptable amount of C-bills, maybe consider switching over to BattleTech. Though BattleTech, of course, isn't perfect. If you do like aliens and all that crap, then yeah, stay as far away from here as possible. It is nice to get a human element in a story, don't get me wrong. I mean, I was complaining about Warhammer always defaulting to Chaos data not too long ago. But demons and aliens are cool, let's not kid ourselves, and it can be disappointing that they aren't around. Same goes for battles in space, ironically enough for a sci-fi universe. There are very good and legitimate reasons in universe for why people take to the ground instead of blowing each other out of orbit. Most are expensive and unwieldy, losing a battle.
Sorry, yeah, I wanted to ask about that. I've never understood why BattleTech never went to the skies. I've never understood why that never happened. It's just something that just never came up for me. In the early times that I was playing the game, I always assumed that we're fighting in orbit. But then I found out later on that that wasn't the case. And I never really found out why they don't fight like that.
Battleship is exponentially more expensive than a mech, and no one can really make warships anymore. And space battles do still occur. I mean, you can't have a sci-fi setting without a few space laser fights. But that being said, those events are the exception and not the rule, especially when you get to the point of the lore where most games take place. Which can feel a bit disappointing for fans of, say, Star Wars, where the difference between a rave and a starship battle is really only how much ecstasy people are dropping at a given moment. In fact, BattleTech generally lacks fantastical things of any nature, which has its own appeal, but if you prefer the more outlandish takes on science fiction, then it might be best to pass on BattleTech. Personally, I think you'd be missing out, but I can only do so much to change someone's taste. Speaking of taste, while there not being any faction-specific units or abilities does mean you're never locking yourself out of models based on who you play, there's a reason Warhammer and video games like Overwatch and TF2 have done so well. People like when there's all sorts of different options and abilities to be had, whether it be because it tailors to someone's preferred playstyle or because it's just fun to see how much carnage you can cause between different options. BattleTech doesn't have that, which can be a bit of a letdown. Again, this is largely a matter of taste, but it's still something to keep in mind, especially if you're looking exclusively towards BattleTech as a war game and not as a setting. Something that is a bit of an actual criticism I have is that many times some of the lore events don't seem to make much sense. What comes to mind first for me is Comstar. Not them as a whole, they're fantastic, but they're founding. They got all the successor states to accept them as a neutral entity, given that they were the ones running the FTL communications network, and without that, everyone would be back to delivering messages manually 1,000 years in the future like Paul fucking Revere. The moment the houses agreed to this, they staged a coup and took over Terra.
Lovely.
No one raised any eyebrows at this. It seems like someone should have gone, now wait just a minute fellas, neutrality is a two-way street. Sure, the states were outraged, as Sarna.net says, but this feels like the kind of thing even those warring factions would take 5 minutes to act on and deal with before getting on with murdering each other. Or when Comstar regularly starts wars among the successor states in order to keep things at a nice, comfortable status quo. Sure, the first time there's a terrorist attack that starts a war between two houses, that's just something that happens. Second time, maybe someone wanted revenge for the first one. Makes sense. But the 27th time it happens coincidentally as everyone was about to reach something that almost looks like peace, it might be time to see if there's a third party at work here.
Right.
Especially when there's a third party whose very first act was to ignore the neutrality they got everyone else to agree to, and also has a monopoly on technology, communications, banking, and, well, everything important, really. What other nitpicks do I have? I suddenly like this franchise now and I'm new to it, so I don't have many negatives yet. Oh, here's a mech rule sheet. Yeah, I don't know what I'm looking at either. This probably all means something. Couldn't for the life of me tell you what, but it's gotta be important. 3.5e Dungeons & Dragons is already hieroglyphics to me. I have no idea what the fuck I'm looking at. So the rules of—
If you ever think play 2nd edition Dungeons & Dragons and try to read the strength table without, like, flinching. Or get Takeo.
the game, I'm fairly sure, are a bit complex. Like, actually complex. Not just there's 500 different rules you need to know, have fun reading a codex every other action you take to see what's going on. And I guess to end on a perfectly lukewarm note, there is a massive amount of lore to this franchise. 40k levels of massive. And at least a few of the books are apparently declared fictional in the universe. So now you gotta figure out which novel is just a story about a universe, and which novel is a story about a universe that's also a fake story in said universe. This is good because it's a massive rabbit hole of lore to get into.
True.
This is bad because it's a massive rabbit hole of lore to get into. If you thought your backlog of entertainment was bad enough already, add all the BattleTech novels to it.
And see, this is the thing. You guys keep on wanting me to get into new universes all the time, and I'm just sitting there like I'm in 40k, SCP, Halo. Well, I'm not so much into Halo anymore. But now people are wanting to get me into Armor Core, Destiny, all these other places. And I'm just like, oh my god, there's only so much room in this. It wasn't functioning that well to begin with.
And Sarna.net. Go on, do it. Have you got anything better to do? I don't. Doubt you do either, to be honest. So there is the most basic analysis of BattleTech the internet has to offer. I've decided that barely knowing Warhammer lore wasn't enough for me, so now I'd quite like to barely know BattleTech lore too. I hope you're ready, because now I'm adding yet another universe to the scattershot of topics I like to cover at random. Thank you, of course, to my wonderful channel members. You're the HPG network to my Comstar, letting me I'd like to end this video with the following statement. Comstar is incredibly based and is always morally in the right. The inner sphere is filled with clowns, and so needs to keep them in their goddamn circus pen before they throw a nuclear cream pie in someone's face for the 50th time that week. Mercenaries run rampant. No one knows how to make a ham sandwich without glassing a planet like Reach, and sometimes you just need to shut off someone's ability to speak for a few months before they learn their goddamn lesson. I am based and compelled, and there's not a damn thing I'm gonna read that'll change my mind, because every time I get into a new war game setting, I find the factions people think are pricks and defend them with my life. Only this time you can, I'll just say elf bad and leave it at that, so suck it.
Alright, so that was PancreasNoWork's video on BattleTech itself. Do or don't. I personally didn't know BattleTech had a tabletop component to it until like a few years ago. And somebody actually mentioned to me, I was like, wait a minute, what? I thought it was just video games. I sincerely thought it was just video games. So it's interesting. God, it's like now I want to jump into the lore and do all this research and stuff like that, and my brain's gonna explode. It doesn't work that well to begin with, guys. It's just somebody help. Somebody send some help for me so I can stop getting just like I don't have all the time. God. I really want to see a video about Karita. I want to see a video about the clans. I want to see a video about Comstar. I want to read a whole bunch of stuff about these. Oh, God. I don't want to do it. Oh, God. Like, I think this is the reason why my brain hurts so much. Because it's filled with pointless knowledge. Guys, PancreasNoWork once again delivers a gem. We knew it was going to be when we started. If this was your first experience with PancreasNoWork and you enjoyed this, please go to his YouTube page. Give him a subscribe because, good God, there's a lot of stuff on there. If you're interested if you're interested in tabletop, of course, go check out his Do or Don't series because it's very expansive. It's great. All of his links are going to be in the description down below right next to my own, including my Patreon, PayPal, all the other kind of stuff. And, guys, I'm going to head out from here, and I'll see you guys next time. Atlases everywhere. Steiner forever.